You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Well, it was close, but that doesn't count even when you're dealing with the horseshoes here in Indianapolis. And, you know, another game out in Jacksonville, another loss for the Indianapolis Colts. And this one was at least, somewhat interesting. I mean, at late, it looked like the curse of Jacksonville was in full effect when it was 34-20 and the Colts could not do anything defensively to stop the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it just really looked bleak. But then, you know what, Joe Flacco found Alec Pierce for a couple of huge plays and made this thing into a game. But, you kind of had a bad feeling about it when the Colts scored that second touchdown from Pierce, just because you looked at the clock, you looked at the way that the possessions were going to go, and you kind of knew that unless the Colts defense could come up with a stop, which by the end of this game was sort of a laughable proposition, that it was going to end up on a last-second field goal by Jacksonville. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened here. So, again, the Colts have not won a road game against Jacksonville since 2014, a weird streak that encompasses, because it's weird because Jacksonville has been one of the worst teams in the league. And it's further compounded by the fact that, even in seasons where Jacksonville hasn't been good, where Indianapolis has been a decent team, they have still had problems with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it's just gotten to this ridiculous level. One year, the Jacksonville Jaguars, 2020, won one game the whole year. It was the first game of the season versus the Colts on the road. The Colts were on the road. Jacksonville proceeded to win the rest of proceeded to lose the rest of their games the whole year. They ended up 1-15. Another season, the Colts went on a crazy hot streak to end the season and get into the playoffs. They finished out like 9-1 that season. The one loss, road to Jacksonville. We've talked about it plenty on the podcast. I've got an article about it on fox59.com, cbs4indy.com. Just one of those odd curiosities of NFL football and sports in general is how much the Colts struggle against Jacksonville Jaguars on the road. And again, even encompasses a game in London in which the Colts lost. So it's no big surprise. I said on the podcast last week that when we were doing our picks that I could not in good conscience pick the Colts against the Jaguars on the road. I tried it last season, didn't work. Similar circumstances this year in some respects because we had Richardson out and you had your backup quarterback starting, although Joe Flacco was obviously quite a bit more effective on the road in this game than Gardner Minshew was when he got thrown into things on the road against Jacksonville. But, a game, another winnable game for the Colts, sort of, thanks to some late game heroics, but, again, couldn't come up with the key defensive stop. A little bit like the Texans game in that the Colts kind of fought their way back into things. If they could have just gotten that key stop at the end of the game and gotten the ball back, maybe they're able to pull things out. Similar game here against Jacksonville, but the ultimate result is a 37-34 loss at the hands, again, of the Jacksonville Jaguars on a not quite a last-second field goal, but a field goal with under 20 seconds left. And the Colts got the ball back. They didn't have any timeouts. And, they had maybe a shot at maybe getting into field goal range, but a sack at the end of the game, ran out the clock and ended that. Could they have preserved some more time at the end of the game? Perhaps. Would it have ultimately mattered? Maybe not. I think probably the most disconcerting thing about this game was, Trevor Lawrence, and we've seen this before with the Colts. This is nothing new. Trevor Lawrence had been completing, I think, upwards of 77% of his passes against the Colts defense. For whatever reason, this sit-back defense from Gus Bradley runs is just catnip for Trevor Lawrence. He just slices it up. And this week, he came into the game this season completing 53% of his passes on the year. He goes up against the Colts this week, 82% of his passes. Trevor Lawrence had been sacked a ton this season. The Colts could barely touch him. I don't think they hit him once. They had very few pressures on him, and a lot of that goes to the credit of the Jaguars, with coming out with a game plan that includes a lot of short throws, get it out quick. Don't let those pass rushers get a chance to get to Lawrence, and so that's what we saw a little bit. And then it doesn't help. I'm not going to make any excuses because you've got to play better on defense, but they're also missing guys. They're missing a lot of guys. They're missing Kwity Paye. They're missing DeForest Buckner. They're missing now Tyquan Lewis, who is a guy that I don't think a lot of people necessarily think of when discussing this Colts defense, but he is a really important piece, a very versatile piece, can play inside, outside, can provide some run support, also very good against, getting to the quarterback as well. He's just a really effective player and has been for the Colts for a while. So having those guys out didn't help. Obviously, we've been missing Juju Brents on the outside for a while. No Kenny Moore this week. Samuel Womack played pretty decent, I thought, in relief there. But man, it just, everything that can go wrong seems to go wrong against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Everything that can go wrong seems to go wrong against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The pass rush not there, run defense MIA at times, inability of this defense, which is designed not to give up a ton of big plays over the top. Gave up some big plays over the top. And then, they defended against the run all right. But when it counted, they gave up a couple of really big run touchdowns to Tank Bigsby. And a lot of that was, especially that last touchdown the guy had. I mean, the Colts should have stopped him 2 or 3 yards into that run, but they just could not finish the tackles. And then, boom, off he goes. With all the defenders running after him, trying to catch him, and you're just not going to do that. That guy has shown, take Bigsby, not just against the Colts, but against other teams, shown he has got some of that breakaway speed that the league values so much. And so the Colts just kept putting themselves into holes, and you just wonder, man, what would have happened in this game if at the end of that first half, you go back to when the Colts forced a turnover, and we're kind of near midfield, and it looked like they were going to have a chance to get some points right before halftime. And instead, they cough the ball up. It gets recovered with about 5 seconds left by the Jaguars, and then they're just handed an automatic 3 points. Well, what did the Colts lose by this week? 3 points. So, not a lot of, especially on the defensive side of things, not a lot of positive things to point to this week. Soft coverage. Guys just being able to get stuff pretty much whenever they wanted to. Brian Thomas Jr. going over the top on the sideline there, just getting an easy catch and run against a Dallas Flowers that clearly is not the Dallas Flowers that the Colts have valued for several years. And that's because he's coming off an Achilles injury, and he's kind of pressed into duty because of some injuries. And they trust him out there, but he's just not got that burst yet back. From an injury that's very difficult for guys who are quick twitch guys to come back from. And then also the 2nd and 25 or 2nd and 24 long completion to Christian Kirk, and that was a real backbreaker in this game. Like how does that happen? That is just one of those things that you just cannot fathom how those things happen, because the whole point is don't give up big plays. You're in a 2nd and 24 situation, so you're kind of sitting back not to give up those big plays, and then he just runs right past the secondary and really bails out the Jaguars, leads to a score for them. So, yeah, and on the offensive side of the ball, it was pretty slow. They had a really nice first drive. It was sort of this methodical Flacco finding guys quickly, not putting himself in danger, making some really nice throws to some guys, getting down there and getting that early score. Then the offense stagnated for a little while. They kind of got back into it a little bit. But in that second half, when they needed some big plays, they finally decided that Alec Pierce exists on the roster and can maybe get some deep balls. So they were finally able to get it to him. And I mean, he's just running right past the corner for the Jaguars. And one was like a cover 3 where the guy on the outside responsibility kind of cheated up, and that left the safety in the middle of the field trying to trail Pierce, who was coming across the formation, and he was wide open, and Flacco made a tremendous throw. Again, you're not going to see that every game from Alec Pierce. He's not going to have a 40-yard catch every week, although it kind of feels like for the Colts this season, he has done that when he's been in games, because that is the strength of his game, is getting downfield, getting vertical, jumping up, and getting receptions. And they were able to they got the Jaguars 3 times in that second half, actually in that fourth quarter, I think. And so, almost pulled off a miracle there with Pierce. But, didn't have Jonathan Taylor this game. Obviously, Richardson didn't play. I think with the defense that the Jaguars were running, Flacco's kind of seen it all. But you do miss some of that mobility. And the run game definitely not very effective, because you don't have Jonathan Taylor back there. You don't have Richardson back there. And teams just, aren't scared of Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson. And that other than that really nice scramble that Flacco had that really reminded me of Matt Ryan from a couple seasons ago, saw some daylight, got past some guys, and got out of bounds for a long rush. That run game's not scaring anybody. Although I do think, Flacco is not going to outrun anybody in a foot race, but he's got good pocket presence. And when those opportunities do exist, he has gotten a couple of scrambles this season, although obviously the one in the Jacksonville game was the most notable. So, in the end again, it's a 37-34 loss for the Colts against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It extends the streak. It puts the Colts back at 2-3 on the season, but, again, not a game anybody necessarily expected the Colts to win, just based on the weird trend out there in Jacksonville. Although it feels like this was about as close as they could come to breaking it this time. Like, they looked dead in the water when it was 34-20 there in the fourth quarter, and then just kind of were rejuvenated with a couple big pass plays to Alec Pierce. But, that's enough of my initial thoughts on the game. Let's hear from Colts head coach Shane Steichen.
Just start off injuries. Will Fry's tibia. He's going to be at the hospital tonight and have a procedure done here to get that fixed. Prayers and thoughts go out with him and his family with that injury. Overall game, it came down to really explosive plays. We had some on offense. Obviously, they had some too. It was a back and forth shootout game. But at the end, obviously, we got to make the plays when we need to make them.
Shane, what do you think of the biggest difference is trying to get that last stop and why you all weren't able to get it?
Say that again.
Why do you think you all weren't able to get that last stop on defense?
I mean, we're being aggressive there early on. Like once they got to around midfield, obviously we were trying to be aggressive to not get them in field goal range, and they hit the out route right there. So credit to them, but we didn't get it done.
Is there thought to taking some timeouts on that drive?
We were going to as soon as they got into that range. Once they got to about the 40, 45-yard line, we knew that was probably about the range. That's when we were going to start using them, but that's how it was.
You were able to start off some explosives at the end of the game, but were those in the game plan before that?
Yeah, we had some of those things going. They're playing a lot of shell against us. We weren't obviously establishing drives early in that third quarter. We had the backed up 3 and out. We had another one where we got to a 4th and 1. Obviously took a delay right there. We were in our own minus territory. But, yeah, we got to continue drives. And it starts with myself to get that thing going. We can't wait until the fourth quarter to start hitting those things, and that starts with me.
With Alex specifically, was it hard to get in the ball because of the too high shell?
Yeah, I'll go back and look at it, but he hit the big one there at the end there in a quarter's look, and they drove on Pitt, and we got one over the top. And a lot of times when you hit these big plays, right, you got to get the right coverage too. And that one, he got the right coverage. Some of the other stuff was cloud stuff. Yep.
Shane, you guys obviously are banged up on the defensive line. Really didn't get much pressure today. Obviously there's a big plays, explosive plays versus pass rush kind of thing that goes on there, but I think maybe you guys need to blitz more.
I'm not going to get into that. Obviously, we need to execute. That's the bottom line. Starts with myself. I'm the head coach. We got to execute better.
Relatedly, Trevor had a pretty clean pocket all day.
Yep.
How much do you think that played a role in his success today?
Yeah, you got to get pressure on the quarterback. We know that, and I have full faith that we'll get that done moving forward. And credit to those, Jacksonville.
What about the other side of Joe's performance coming in today and knowing maybe at the last minute?
Yeah, I don't remember what he threw for 365. I don't know how many attempts he had.
315.
359. Yeah, he did great. Obviously, he came out and operated at a high level, hit the big plays when we needed them, especially at the end. I mean, 2-play drive, obviously, to get in there. And then, obviously, the next was another 2-play drive to bang it right back in there to get us tied up there. So, yeah, he had a hell of a game.
And he went through a pretty extensive workout right before the game. Was it a true game time decision for him?
Yeah, no, he was doubtful. That's where it was at. Yeah, but Joe went out there and had a good game.
Was it something with Anthony that he could have heard it worse?
Yeah, I didn't want to put him out there too in harm's way on certain things. You know what I mean? So
With Alec, like we know he's a great deep threat, but just the way he attacks the ball when it's in the air, how key is that?
it's huge. He's got a huge big vertical jump. You know, we threw him a little route right there, right before he caught the go ball to get down to the 1 yard line. Obviously, that catch he made, that vertical jump to get it and catch that ball was huge. So he's doing a hell of a job for us.
What gives you faith in this defense? You talked about, having faith in them, believing that they can bounce back, but kind of up and down the season, what gives you faith in this group to figure it out?
Because of the guys we got over there with Zaire and EJ and Buck and Quiddy and, all the guys, they work their tails off every week. I mean, this is the National Football League. This stuff ain't easy. And our guys battle and fight and scratch and claw. And we just got to find ways at the end. And obviously, this was a tough one today.
Did you get a look at that 70-yard touchdown they had? I don't know if there was a miscommunication there.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look at the tape. Obviously, they hit the big one there. Yep.
Tight ends have been pretty quiet this year, but today, Mo catches that touchdown, better game overall for those guys. What did you think of that room today, and what did you think of that touchdown catch?
That was a great touchdown catch. Obviously, Mo's been doing that for a while, and they played a man coverage look there, so it gave him a one-on-one opportunity. So it was great to see that. I thought those guys battled all day.
10th straight loss on the road against Jacksonville. Was it just something about playing here?
I don't have a great answer for you. I've been here 2 years. I know some of the guys in the locker room have been around it, but we got to get that fixed for sure going forward.
So that was Coach Steichen talking about a lot of different things involving the game, some clock management stuff, talking about the defense. He still got full confidence in, their players and their scheme and all of those types of things, saying all the things that, Coach Steichen's always going to say. And, when it comes to things that don't go right necessarily on the field, he's the guy that, is kind of the buck stops here. I'm the head coach, and I'm going to take the blame for everything. And you got to respect that. Most coaches in the league are like that, but, especially Steichen. Colts missing some key personnel again. Not having Jonathan Taylor in there is really going to limit your running game, and not having Richardson there as well. It seems like having him in there loosens up the run game a little bit. Should mention, on the injury front, Will Fries had a really bad injury. They didn't show a replay on this one. I'm sure if you search Twitter that it's out there. But he had to have a procedure in Jacksonville immediately on his leg. So they brought in Dalton Tucker, I think was the undrafted guy that they brought in and seemed to play all right. So, they were missing Ryan Kelly on the offensive line as well, but Tanner Bortolini has filled in adequately there, I think. Really it's funny. Yeah, the offense was missing some pieces, but they were still able to be, even when they had only scored 20 points at that point late in the game, they had some things that they were doing well, and we did have the fumble and the turnover from Flacco. He was sacked a few times in this game, but it wasn't. It still worked okay. The offense functioned, and boy, I tell you what, if you could get A.D. Mitchell to finish off some of these catches, that offense would function really, really well. I also want to give shout out there, some kudos to Josh Downs. What a difference in this offense it's made since he's come back. That guy is just a really, really good player, a good receiver, and the numbers aren't gaudy. They don't jump off the page, but if you watch the game, you see the kind of catches he makes. You see when he makes them. Just a whole different ball game when Josh Downs in there, and he seems to have a pretty good rapport with Flacco. So hopefully he can develop something like that with Richardson as well, because that is where Richardson needs that help, is sort of in those short and intermediate routes we've seen. Of course, we've also seen him sail one 10 yards over Josh Downs' head at least once. So, we'll see. I know the question's always going to come back now. with the Colts being competitive here in this game, putting up the big yards in the fourth quarter and the big plays when they needed them to make this thing a little bit tighter for Jacksonville than they probably wanted there at the end. The question's always going to be, well, is Joe Flacco sort of the quarterback of the now and Anthony Richardson the quarterback of the future? But you've got to play your draft pick. He has got to get some time in there. And Steichen in his press conference talked about, they just didn't want Richardson's injury, which is listed as an oblique injury, which it can be a pretty painful injury because it's where you're kind of twisting your upper body and when you're getting torque from your throws and stuff like that. Sometimes baseball players will have an oblique injury, and that's just really tough because you're swinging the bat. And so either side that you might have one of those injuries can be pretty tough. And so they just didn't want it to get worse than it could get. So they held him out this week, and they had a plan. They thought Flacco would be able to do some stuff against this Jaguars offense. And for the most part, they were right. The offense went into some tizzies where they did not necessarily get as productive as you would like. But in the end, they made some plays. They made things interesting. It would be nice if they weren't down by 2 touchdowns when they did that. But, and then you do talk about the offense or the defense not being very effective, and the defense was able to get a couple of stops, to keep this thing interesting there, those last couple possessions when the Colts were able to cash in on some big plays, but still not able to necessarily close the door when they needed to. And that's the thing that probably bothers you the most if you're a fan of the Colts is, the defense came up a couple of times big in the fourth quarter to keep it close, but when it really mattered, when the game was literally on the line there and they needed to get a stop to make it a difficult field goal or keep the Jaguars out of field goal range, just unable to do it. Just weird things happen in Jacksonville Jaguars games, and that's the Colts causing a fumble and then giving up a fumble of their own. They gave up a long punt return, which the unit's been pretty decent on coverage this year, but they gave up a long return earlier in this game. Even Pierce's first catch, where he went up for it and batted it down to himself and came down in bounds with the ball. Just wacky things that take Tank Bigsby's 2 touchdown runs. Just weird things just kind of happened in Jacksonville to the Colts. And, I guess we just kind of have to live with it. The Colts will never go 17-0 in a season as long as they have to play the Jacksonville Jaguars on the road. So it's just, one of those things that we just kind of have to get used to, I suppose. But hey, Joe Flacco played pretty well for the Colts. Had a nice game. Not quite a career high on yardage, but he was very efficient. 75% of his passes completed, threw for over 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Did have the fumble there at the end of the half, which again kind of turns into being one of those keys for Jackson or for this game. But let's hear from the Colts' backup quarterback.
Yeah, obviously it's one of those games that ends up being, kind of like you want the ball last. But hey, Shane said it to us in the locker room after the game, like, this is the NFL. You're going to play games like this, and you got to be able to dig deep and try to find a way to win.
What do you think of Alec Pierce just giving you all a chance to win, giving you?
It was awesome. Yeah, it was. I was actually excited to get the ball to him because you could see, he's coming up to me and he has ideas as to how he wants, as to how we can get him the ball, and he's good. Man, he's done such a good job this year. I think he's a hell of a player. So I was actually kind of feeling bad, like, man, we got to get him involved in this game. We got to start getting him involved in these games. Like, how can we do that? And then boom, he makes an awesome catch on the sideline, and then things just start rolling. So a lot of credit to him to kind of keep his head in the game, stay focused, because I don't really think he had anything before that. And then you could probably look at a couple plays like, man, Joe could have got me here. What was, and you could kind of think like that. And even if he did, like, it didn't show. So a lot of credit to him, like I said, for keeping his head in it and like showing up big for us at the end.
How bad did you need those explosives? Because it is hard to go
For sure.
14 plays.
Well, especially the first one, because the first one, like there's 5 minutes, we get the ball back with 5 minutes. We're in 2-minute mode. You have to score quick, because if you don't score quick, you give them the ball back, they could end the game. So the fact that we actually got those explosives right there, that was huge. We had a 3-play drive, what we thought was a 2-play drive. That's exactly what we needed. That was kind of the drive that obviously kept us in the game.
How much of not being able to get out of the ball earlier? Shane said there's a ton of shell coverage.
Yeah, they did. It's like, I think last week they started to play a lot of shell against Houston, and then this week they played a bunch of different stuff against us, and they did play a ton of shell, and they were making us. I mean, you saw it. Like, it's kind of frustrating to a certain extent. They're making us take 1-yard, 2-yard completions. Did I miss something there? Should I have thrown that down the field? I don't know. Those are some of the questions you start asking yourself. But I think we did a good job staying patient, and then this is the kind of game it ended up being. But yeah, they did a good job of making us go the long, hard way. I think we had a 16-play drive for one of those touchdowns. That's not the easiest way to do it.
When they are playing you that way, I mean, do you have to fight any urge to just try one of those shots? Or how
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a lot of the dialogue with yourself on the sideline, and a lot of just kind of sitting there and calming down after each drive and not trying to get too high, not trying to let the emotions of like being in the moment affect you so much. And it's just that dialogue with yourself to just kind of keep riding this thing out. You've been through enough of these to see that, hey, you just need to have you need to have a chance at the end. So.
Can you explain that one to Marley Cox? Were you continuing to throw it to him, and there was another guy kind of running behind him as well in the end zone early in the fourth quarter?
The one I hit him on, or the one that we didn't hit on?
The one you hit on.
Yeah. So I saw him, like, they came up and actually played man, and he got an inside release, and he was running the corner route, so I was just trying to back shoulder him and give him a shot. He did a great job going up for it.
Joe, what stands out just about the resilience of this team that's kind of made an impression on you?
Yeah, listen, it's tough to it's tough to kind of look for those things when you lose a football game, but there's a lot of good guys in that locker room. I mean, you see it. Like, I've been on enough teams now. I don't think NFL guys get a ton of credit for like being high character, people necessarily all the time. But there's a ton of high character guys in that locker room, and just good people. I think when you get guys on your team that are good people, they're tough. They're willing to fight. They want to do it. They want to show up for themselves. They want to show up for the guy next to them. When you get people that are like that, then that's kind of the recipe for building a good football team, because you're going to have people that are constantly playing through that full 60 minutes, and that's what we have in there.
When you look back on this week, do you think you managed things well in your role, knowing Anthony was kind of battling to come back and you were still taking all the reps, obviously, in practice there? Do you think that you handled things well leading up to this game in your role?
I did what I know. You go back to that. Listen, even the last few weeks, I'm trying to stay in that routine of being the guy. Obviously, you can't quite get to that spot. Like, I wish there was something that you could take and, it turned the blinders on and you just thought you were starting all week, and, then all of a sudden you showed up right before the game and they told you weren't. Because there is a little bit of a difference, obviously, but that's the fight of being the backup, is trying to maintain that routine every day. I tell people, like, in that role, you kind of distract yourself from like thinking about Sunday on Tuesday by that routine. You come in and you take care of Tuesday. You come in, you take care of Wednesday, and you feel good about what you did. You do this. Oh, and you go home at night and you're like, oh man, I did it all, and you feel good. And you're not thinking about Sunday and like, letting the weight of that kind of get on you. So getting back in the role where you're getting practice reps and you're probably going to play, that's the easy part, to be honest with you.
You've been in Anthony's spot before, where you're dealing with an injury and you want to play, but it might not be the best idea. Was there anything you could say to him this week?
Hey, listen, everybody's different, and for me this week with him, it's just like you kind of want to give him his own space and let him kind of feel that out. And I wasn't sure, I wasn't sure how he was feeling. Like, and to his credit, he looks good. He's trying to do things. He's trying to get back out there. But I wasn't sure. So like, I just wanted to kind of give him his own space to kind of see how he wanted to go about that. And like I said, I was kind of just the guy that was like, all right, I'm here. I'll be ready if need be. I've been in that spot once. It was my last year in Baltimore. I hurt my hip, and man, I did not want to let Lamar get out there. That's for sure. That was my team, and that was very hard mentally for me. I pushed it as far as I could in terms of trying to let them convince me to go out there and play. But at the same time, you don't want to put your future career, in danger. And I mean, that was my 11th year, and now I'm sitting here 17. So sometimes you got to be able to be patient with those things as much as they may hurt in the moment.
Joe,
last one.
You guys have had quick 3-and-outs, also some long drives. What do you think is the biggest thing to just get more consistent on offense?
Yeah, well, like I said, listen, you're going to have some of that sometimes, and it is disappointing. But they did. I mean, I think if you look at those drives, there may have been a couple things that we could have done to actually keep the chains moving. But we had a 0-yard completion and a 1-yard completion, and they're playing zone, and we're running crossers, and you try to get a ball in the guy's hands and see if he can make something. But it's just little things. There was a couple times where we did get down in the red zone, or maybe once or twice, where if we get touchdowns, maybe it changes the game a little bit. Those are probably the things I'm going to look at more so than some of those 3-and-outs that we had. Is could we have scored a touchdown here and made a difference in the game?
Yeah.
All right, guys.
That was Indianapolis Colts quarterback Joe Flacco talking about his efforts in the Colts and their 37-34 loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, it drops the Colts to 2-3 on the season. And, another AFC South game lost. The Texans were able to eke out a win against the Bills this week. So, they are in charge of that division right now. So the Colts are got to have a lot of work to do ahead of them here. They lost the first 2 games of the year. They'd won 2 in a row, one against a bad Chicago team, one against a pretty good Pittsburgh team. But this week, just could not quite contain the Jacksonville Jaguars. Up next, it will be a Sunday 1 p.m. kickoff, as many of the Colts games are this season. It'll be at the Tennessee Titans. Titans were on a bye this week. That game will be on CBS 4. Dave and Mike and I will have a complete wrap-up of all of the Colts information this week, all the news, injury news. Maybe we'll get some guys back soon, that sort of thing. We'll see who starts this week for the Colts in that Titans game. But until then, I'm Matt Adams. Thanks for listening.